I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve.
They looked something like a pie plate that was cut in half.
UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. The dubious distinction of being the first person of cabinet rank in the G8 countries
saw an absolute armada of UFOs last night, January 21st.
I seen a big craft with the lights going around. It was about 9, 10 o'clock at night. I was hearing the over to the west. Yeah, I had never seen anything like that. Changed altitude and went up 2 miles in less than a flash of a second.
Would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
UFOs. They are a topic that has fascinated us because of what they represent. If proven to be true, it would be an effect on every aspect of our lives, from science to religion, and how we would view each other. Naturally, such strongly provocative implications would be met with a harsh rebuke requiring an extraordinary amount of evidence for the mainstream to take seriously. Well, we're going to do just that in this little mini documentary. I want to show how people's thought forms have evolved over the centuries when it comes to UFO sightings, and how we progress from an inconceivable existence with never a second or even a first thought to a stark realization from indisputable evidence that non-human engineered craft fly in our skies. First up, we want to see where the first inklings where we might not be alone took root, and let's start in the Paleolithic era about 13,000 years ago in the Neo caves of France. Here, cavemen have painted what looks to be what we would call a flying saucer. Now, because so much time has passed and the subjectiveness of interpretations of the artists, I can't say for sure, these represent UFOs, but I can tell you that many prehistoric caves contain similar images, and it took great time and effort to make these pictures, so this image had meaning to the people who created it. Jumping forward in time, our next mystery is the 1561 celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg. Here we have a recording in block print from the front page of a newspaper of a battle of unknown objects in the sky. It lasted for an hour and even had a black spear or triangle type UFO, which is a common type of UFO seen today. It talks about the objects burning from the sky and turning into smoke when they crashed, long before aircraft and fuel-based machines were invented. What's important here is how religion was the filter in which this event was witnessed and affected people's perception of a truly bizarre spectacle, because people had an explanation, albeit religious and not scientific, that was enough to reassure people that everything fit within the natural way of order and understanding of the world at their time. Unfortunately, people didn't realize the significance of knowing what a UFO was or the implications of their existence. About a century later, on March 1st, 1639, we have America's first UFO sighting, which was credibly documented by Governor John Winthrop. It details James Everell, a sober, discreet man, and 2 others who witnessed a light move around the banks of the river that they were rafting for a few hours. When they finally saw the light leave, they were back upstream where they started and never remember rowing back up, and hence had missing time from the event, a common occurrence for many UFO cases. Furthermore, several other drivers along the road also saw this light, adding to further credibility. Multiple witnesses who independently corroborate a sighting can rule out falsehoods and hallucinations. Sure, it could still be a misidentification, but it's still a solid report in our very first. When we start to look at the dawn of the modern age, the UFO phenomenon takes off rapidly, with both Kenneth Arnold's sightings of 9 unidentified objects flying in formation along the crest of the Cascade Range near Mount Rainier. He described them as flying saucers and is the person whom the term is attributed to. Also, the UFO crash at Roswell, New Mexico also helped jumpstart the public's fascination with UFOs. At this moment in history, people seeing lights and crafts no longer think of angels or religious signs, but more airplanes and other tangible craft. While the populace takes peace in the realist explanation of unknown vehicles, Subconsciously, we acknowledge something is there, but we take comfort that it must be a case of mistaken identity, as it would protect us against the very real disruptions to our sense of superiority and understanding of our place in the universe. The public's first true test of what is thought to be real came during World War II. There was a high number of UFO sightings, specifically small orbs of light that would follow airplanes, both Allied and German. Both sides thought the other came up with the new weapon, and reports were taken seriously. Donald J. Meyer, a radar operator in the 415th Night Fighter Squadron, came up with the name Foo Fighter based on a comic called Smokey Stover, who made the word Foo famous. There were many theories about what Foo Fighters were, as a significant number were being reported nearly daily, and theories like St. Elmo's fire and ball lightning were dismissed by pilots and experts alike. To this day, the sheer amount of appearances, coupled with numerous photos and countless pilot reporting, make this one of the largest mass sightings ever. At a time where a skilled military pilot faced death and the mounting technological advances of the enemy, they paid close attention to anomalies and reported them as accurately as possible in case they presented an unknown danger from the other side. Because of this, I can't emphasize enough the veracity of their reports of aerial phenomena that could not be duplicated by the technological know-how of that era and yet still happen, making a large number of people question just what really were those Foo Fighters. The two other great pieces of information I wanted to add are the photographs from Paul Trent taken in McMinnville, Oregon on May 11, 1950. These have undergone testing, once from William K. Hartman, an astronomer who said, "This is one of the few UFO reports in which all factors investigated, geometric, psychological, and physical, appear to be consistent with the assertion that an extraordinary flying object, silvery metallic disc shape, tens of meters in diameter and evidently artificial, flew within sight of two witnesses." In 1975, Bruce Maccabee, an optical physicist for the US Navy, had the opportunity to test the negatives directly, and based on several factors such as atmospheric extinction and the line of sight of the two images intersecting behind the power lines, ruled out any hoax. Obviously, there are still some skeptics, but these photos have never been debunked. The other piece of evidence is what was burnt onto the body of Stephen Michalak on May 20th, 1967 at Falcon Lake, Manitoba, Canada. This is considered Canada's most researched UFO case. Mr. Michalak was prospecting for gems when he encountered an odd-looking craft and heard two voices emanating from within. He approached the craft, asked if they needed help, and burned his gloves when he touched the outside of the craft. It was extremely hot. The object at the moment took off, and a jet of hot air blasted out and caught his shirt on fire and made a grid-like burn on his abdomen. He reported symptoms of nausea, blackouts, and diarrhea, all pointing to signs of radiation sickness. Amazingly, after the grid-like welts went down, they reappeared 9 months later, and every 3 months after that for about a year, leaving doctors baffled. The police and government investigated for several years, and almost all evidence of the case has been preserved and stands out as one of the best documented physical pieces of evidence to this day. At this point, public interest was very intense from the 40s to the late 60s, so much so that the government formed Project Blue Book to investigate all these reports. In that time, 12,000 reports were investigated, and of those, 700 still remain unexplained. It would be another 4 decades until the government starts to investigate UFOs again, but now the vast majority of people have been introduced to the idea of UFOs and enough information in the day to start to question some of the long-held assumptions. Interactions were beginning to escalate with UFOs and were producing more than just eyewitness accounts, but actual hard physical evidence in the form of pictures, radar returns, injuries, radiation spikes in soil, even purported debris. We can also add deactivated nuclear missiles to that list now. Back in September 2010, there was a conference of 120 former military officers that described how UFOs have been seen around nuclear facilities and silos. Back in 1967, Captain Robert Salas had 10 ICBMs go inoperative while reports of a red glowing object was above the base. Many others have had similar stories of UFOs turning off ICBMs, affecting our nuclear readiness. So with all these reports filtering out amongst the public, it was only a matter of time, with people looking skyward and the advances in camera technology, that the first multi-camera film mass sighting UFO case happened in Greifswald, East Germany, August 24th, 1990. The UFOs were spotted over the Greifswald nuclear power plant for a couple of hours, according to most witnesses. They described there were several UFOs grouped into two clusters, and the UFOs were going faster and making tighter turns than any plane they've seen. Hundreds of people witnessed these lights move and blink out and appear again. This is the first time we've had many photos and films from different locations and angles, all viewing the same event. Even 60 miles away, residents in New Brandenburg could see these lights, thus ruling out weather balloons, and don't forget drones did not exist at this time either. This is regarded as Germany's best UFO case that has never been explained either. What Greifswald gave us was the first piece of hard evidence that couldn't be deemed a hoax and really had to make the inquisitive ponder the hard facts of discovery. At this point in time, the UFO fandom had moved mainstream, where most people know the typical sighting and seen pop culture references to ufology, even if they are skeptical. It was the seed of consistency that would soon sprout the deeper curiosity to seek the truth in the next generation, and it doesn't get more mainstream than primetime news. Enter the Kaikoura light sighting. For about a week, there were many sightings off the coast of the Kaikoura Islands of New Zealand, beginning December 21st, 1978. An Australian news crew led by Quentin Fogarty was able to film aboard a cargo plane late December 31st, and what they documented was nothing short of astounding. There were two flights, and both times lighted craft followed the plane almost alongside of it, while the ground and the plane's radar both picked up the UFOs right where they were being filmed. They even filmed a massive orb that shows what Fogarty described, a bright bottom with a transparent sphere on top. All attempts to explain what was so meticulously detailed and captured by a trained cameraman have fallen completely short. This really added a shot in the arm to the credibility of so many similar UFO stories that had never had the benefit of a professional news team to report them before. Pilots are in the uniquely qualified lot that make for the most reputable UFO claims. They know what a plane or a helicopter will look like and how they move. When they see something that doesn't quite fit their experience, they'll report it as a UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomena, the modern term for UFO. Also, many pilots don't come forward, fearing for their jobs, so when commercial and Air Force pilots do so, they truly believe in what they saw. Take the world-famous case of Japan Airlines Flight 1628 on November 17, 1986. Captain Kenju Tarachi had two large UFOs fly up and keep formation with his plane. They were tracked by military radar, and Captain Kenju used the plane's radar to verify the UFOs as well. It was shown they moved thousands of miles per hour to maneuver into the airspace around the plane. However, they disappeared, and a large orb-like craft described to be the size of two aircraft carriers started to tail the plane, eventually leaving after another plane came to inspect what was going on. A high-level FAA administrator, John Callahan, reviewed all the documents and was able to publish them so we can know the full account of the mystery that was over Alaskan skies that evening. Speaking of airports, one of the best witness-only cases, which unfortunately did not have any photographs that we know of, was the O'Hare Airport sighting on November 7, 2006. It lasted for several minutes and was witnessed by over a dozen pilots, mechanics, and aircrew, though the tower did not have a vantage point to see it. There exist audio tapes of the pilots talking about it, and no one thought it was a terrestrial craft. It just hovered over Terminal C and shot straight up, punching a hole through the clouds as it did. The official explanation of it being a weather event has been debunked, and people who were there knew it was a craft, not a cloud. When an event that seems impossible to our understanding as a whole and keeps on being reported in growing numbers and credibility, when it takes up news media coverage, generates wide-held beliefs in the population, and people begin to profit off of said belief, well, that's when society's most intelligent people like scientists and professional investigators start to research seriously to either prove or debunk that phenomenon. The quest to seek out the truth, whatever it may be, is a powerful curiosity for most. Deep down, we want to know what is real and as many facts as possible in order to accept and react the best we can. So around August 3rd, 2015, a group called the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, or the SCU for short, was founded. They are made up of both research scientists, military officials, and technical investigators, and they do in-depth, hardcore scientific research on UAPs. Their first report was 161 pages detailing a UFO that was captured from Homeland Security plane in Puerto Rico of an object flying through the air. The object descends into the water without any slowing, vibration, or shock, going 90 miles per hour, comes back to the surface and splits into two pieces while still going. They conclude there is no craft or device that can do what this thing did. I have a link to both their site and the report down below. After reading through most of the investigation, I got a chill realizing that professional, skeptical, and highly educated people of science were confirming sightings and doing the hard math to show the evidence did not point to mundane explanations in some of the best UFO cases. It is the confirmation from groups like the SCU, as well as the influence from sci-fi movies and pop culture, that has made the notion of UFOs being real more acceptable to believe in. Sources like the internet were a boon to the public's ability to research and report UFO sightings around the world. The belief in extraterrestrial UFOs has become a self-perpetuating one and has taken such a hold in so many people that current polls show 36% of Americans believe UFOs have visited, and a further 54% believe that the government has knowledge of them. Ufology was lacking just one last fact for complete confirmation of their field, and that was disclosure from the government. It always seemed elusive. That was until December 2017, when the flight recording of a Navy Super Hornet fighter jet recorded an object displaying feats well beyond what is achievable by human-built aircraft. Captain David Fravor was the pilot who tried to intercept the intruder into the Nimitz carrier group back in November 2004. The support ship Princeton picked up a radar contact of an unidentified aerial phenomena, and Captain Fravor approached with his wingmen when the object went from 28,000 feet to sea level in under a second. They saw that it was a tic-tac shaped craft with no form of propulsion, either mechanical or jet turbine, no flight surfaces for lift, and no exhaust plume. Quite frankly, it defied all laws of aviation as we know them. This tic-tac UFO flies so fast that under 2 seconds it disappears out of sight, and Princeton radar put the UFO 60 miles away in a matter of seconds. Think about it. Let's say this happened in 5 seconds. The craft moved 60 miles. That would mean it moved at 43,000 miles per hour, almost 7 times faster than the X-43 experimental hypersonic aircraft and 2.5 times faster than the speed of a space shuttle. But here's the real shocker. The Navy confirms that the video showing the Nimitz Tic Tac is genuine. Though of course they didn't admit to extraterrestrials, they did however admit to it being an unidentified aerial phenomenon, a term they refused to acknowledge since 1947, knowing all the connotation it brings. They also confirmed that 2 other videos showing similar incursions into a training group, but on the East Coast, was also authentic. Here's the thing, if we take the pilot and report at its word, which the Navy is saying yes to, then I can't see any craft expend that much energy to move so fast and not produce a massive exhaust trail. I personally have studied and have knowledge of the aviation field and principles of flight, and it's not scientifically possible with known aviation technology for any object to maintain flight no matter how advanced without visible thrust and visible flight surfaces to produce lift. These craft would have to have a radically different and foreign form of propulsion that is completely different than every single vehicle that has ever flown in the past 100 years. Now, the general public, both skeptic and proponent, was taking seriously the concerns UFOs could present to us, and this was due in large part to the slow but constant release of great pieces of evidence to build a strong case for the existence of UFOs. Change is now inevitable and sweeping through our society. We have seen senators now get UFO briefings, the Navy has revamped the procedures to report UFOs, Navy pilots are confirming aircraft carriers are being followed by fleets of them, and that for a year, the sightings were pretty much daily in occurrence. Then the Pentagon, in May of 2019, confirms the existence of a program called Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, which was a secret $22 million program which ran from 2007 till 2012 and investigated UAP and UFOs from around the world. The head of the program at the time was Luis Elizondo, who has said there is very compelling evidence we may not be alone.
We may not be alone.
And this is where we are today. Major confirmations from both scientists and the military. A mountain of physical evidence we can look over and test. Multiple highly credible witnesses, usually with radar or filmed to support their sightings, and an ever-growing number of people who have come to accept there are craft visiting us from other worlds. All these factors will continue to mount pressure for the government to continue to disclose evidence in the existence of UFOs, especially as technology will make it harder and harder for the government to contain the truth. When all is taken as a whole, past reports of encounters will have a new lens of credibility when history looks back and recounts what people have seen. I leave you with this quote that Michio Kaku said on Fox News, and see how it takes on new meaning in light of all this new UFO evidence.
We are now witnessing a tipping point. You see, the burden of proof used to be on the believers to prove that UFOs are real. Now the burden of proof has shifted to the government and the military to prove that they're not real. But the evidence is overwhelming. We have all this information from U.S. Navy pilots. We now have metrics. We can actually measure how fast they travel, how high they are, what kinds of centrifugal forces that they can experience. And science, remember, is based on things that are testable. Now we have testable information. A game changer.